In this video, we're going to be looking at creating the future tense forms of third and fourth conjugation verbs. Now, if you remember when we talked about the first and second conjugation verbs, I mentioned that they're going to be done differently than the third and fourth conjugation verbs. So we're going to be looking at that now. One thing, though, that doesn't change is how it's translated into English. We're still going to use words like will and shall when we translate these. The biggest difference, though, is going to be how we create them. There's a few small changes that are going to come up when we start to conjugate them in our steps. So one thing I want to go ahead and do is just throw out a third conjugation verb that we can use as an example. Recently, we saw some IO verbs, and that's the one I want to use right now. It's coupio, coupere. And hopefully you remember that this is what's called a third conjugation IO verb. We call it an IO verb because its first principal part ends with the letters IO, and we know it's third conjugation because the infinitive, the second principal part, ends with a short ERE. And this word, of course, means to want or desire. So this is one that we can use as a good example here. There's a couple steps that we're going to want to follow when we're working with creating the future tense. Our first step is going to be a step that we normally start out with when we're working with verbs, and that's going to be to create the stem. Now, what's going to change here is that when we're dealing with the future tense, third and fourth conjugation verbs, whether they're a regular third conjugation or it's an IO verb, like coupio here, when we create this stem, for the future tense, we're going to do this by removing the long O from the first principal part. This differs from stuff that we've done in the past. We've done this previously when we were working with the third conjugation IO verbs, but now we're going to do it even with the fourth conjugation and regular thirds. We're just going to want to remove that O. So if we're working with coupio, that's going to leave us with something like coupy. And this is going to be the stem that the rest of our words are going to be based off of. So that's the first step for us. Our second step is going to seem a little familiar, and that's going to be adding the tense indicator. Now, what's going to change is that we're not using the same tense indicator that we used with the first and second conjugation. With first and second conjugation, the tense indicator was the letter B. Now it's not going to be the letter B. In fact, there's actually going to be two different things it can be. If what we're working with is a first person singular, so the I form, the I will do something, for that one, our tense indicator is going to be the letter A. For everything else, we're going to use the letter E. So for the first person singular, we're going to want to use the letter A. While everywhere else, we're going to want to use the letter E. Finally, the third and last step for us is going to be to add the personal endings. Now, these personal endings are going to look familiar. They're going to be the exact same personal endings that we have used with the imperfect tense. So that means the letters M, S, T in the singular, and in the plural, M-U-S, T-I-S, and N-T. That's if we're working with the active voice. If we're working with the passive voice, it's going to be the same ones we're used to, R, R-I-S, T-U-R, M-U-R, M-I-N-I, and N-T-U-R. At this point, we just simply add those letters in there, and we will be done. So that gives us coupium, I shall want, coupies, you will want, coupiet, he, she, or it will want, coupiamus, we will want, coupiatus, you will want, and coupient, they will want. And that's all we have to do with the active voice. In the passive voice, you just change those endings around, and instead of MST, must, is empty, we put meris, ter, mini, enter there. That gives us coupiar, I shall be wanted. Coupiaris, you will be wanted. Coupiator, he, she, or it will be wanted. Coupiamur, we will be wanted. Coupiamini, You plural, shall be wanted, will be wanted, and to be intur, they will be wanted. That's all you've got to do to create them in the passive voice. The key here in the third and fourth conjugation is just remembering, create that stem by taking off the first O of the first principal part. You're not going to want to go to the second principal part for a change. And your tense indicator here is going to be the letters A or E. It makes it a little bit harder to see it when you're looking at it in translation, but that's really all there is to it. And that is how we form the future tense of third and fourth conjugation verbs.